Part 5. Perception of the situation of objects. Starting in paragraph 88 through 119, he talks about how we perceive the situation or the location of objects. So in this section, he really focuses on Molyneux's problem, or a man born blind, and how he's going to perceive location if he suddenly received his sight. And also, he spends a lot of time covering inverted images. By that I mean how the existing science of the day, and even today, will say that the image that is projected onto our retina is actually an inverted image of what is in our field of vision. And Berkeley takes exception to this, and he analyzes it in great deal because he figures it is really a key concept in understanding what location really is in terms of vision. So starting in paragraph 88, he of course criticizes the current science, mainly because in this case they're not distinguishing between ideas of sight and touch, which he feels he has proved is a distinction that must be considered. So starting in paragraph 92, a man born blind, his awareness of location for such a man would be based on his sense of the natural attraction of all things to the center of the earth, by which he would relate the tangible objects he understands by touch to be upper or lower relative to what he feels as the surface of the earth. So his sense of gravity is going to be the dominant parameter which really defines how he senses location. So if this man had his sight suddenly restored upon first sight, he would not be able to relate the concepts of up or down or erect or inverted to anything that he sees based on what he already knows from touch about the situation of objects. So in essence, he would be faced with a world of unexperienced direct objects of sight, an explosion of color and shape and shade and shadow, and he would, through experience, have to first relate all those images to the tangible world of location that he already knows before he would be able to perceive the situation of objects using his vision alone. So starting in paragraph 96 through 97, Berkeley speculates on how this learning process is going to take place. So upon turning his head or eyes up or down, left or right, he shall observe the visible objects to change. And he shall also attain to know that they are called by the same names and connected with the objects that he's previously perceived by touch. Then indeed he will come to speak of them and their situation in the same terms that he has been used to apply to tangible things. And these that he perceived by turning up his eyes, he will call upper, and those that by turning his eyes down, he will call lower. So then Berkeley makes his key point here, that without this motion of the eye, this turning it up and down in order to discern different objects, doubtless erect, inverse, up, down, etc., and other like terms relating to the position of tangible objects would never have been transferred or in any degree apprehended to belong to the ideas of sight. The mere act of seeing including nothing in it to that purpose. Whereas the different situations of the eye naturally direct the mind to make a suitable judgment of the situation of objects intromitted by it. So given this process that he's described, when this man who was born blind that suddenly received his sight has by experience learned the connection there is between sight and touch, he will be able, by the perception he has of the situation of visible things in respect to one another, to make a sudden and true estimate of the situation of outward tangible things corresponding to them. And thus it is he shall perceive by sight the situation of external objects which do not properly fall under that sense. So in paragraph 100, he really points out that we run into a lot of problems if we don't properly distinguish between the visible and the tangible, especially when it comes to the earth. The tangible earth is dominated by this constant attractive force of gravity, which gives us a sense of lower. But this has nothing to do with the visible world. In the visible world, we do not sense gravity because we see only colors and shape, light and dark, shade, shadow. So now paragraph 107 to 110, he brings up a subject that is important in his later works, the concept that number only really exists in our minds. So there is no necessary connection between the number of visible objects and the number of tangible objects. Because number is nothing fixed or settled, really existing in things. Accordingly, as the mind variously combines its ideas, the unit varies. As the unit, so the number varies. Therefore, what may by sight seem like a collection of 4, by touch might seem like a collection of 16 or some other number, etc. So on to paragraph 111, he's starting to wrap up the subject of location. And he emphasizes that we must distinguish between the objects of sight and the objects of touch when we talk in terms of high, low, right, left, backward, forward, etc. And as long as we keep objects of vision separate from tangible objects, we have no problems with consistency. So in paragraph 112 he makes kind of a related, separate point, which is that the proper objects of sight are no distance, neither near nor far, from any tangible thing. The distance between two visible locations is simply the number of minimum visible physical points between them, and likewise for two tangible locations. However, the distance between a visible and a tangible location is meaningless, and there is no distance between them. So then in paragraph 113, he addresses this issue that is in seeming contradiction in mainstream science about the fact that we see inverted images in the front of our eye. So in the front of the eye, our visible feet are on the visible earth. By touch, I know that my tangible feet are in contact with the tangible earth. These experiences are consistent and there is no contradiction. The only contradiction arises when we contemplate our visible feet in relation to the tangible earth.